Hey, welcome everybody to Pro Mindset Podcast. This is your host, Craig Domann. Today we have a gentleman by the name of Jeremy Stalnecker, who is the CEO of Mighty Oaks Foundation. And Jeremy is a veteran, served our country. Thank you very much for that. Former pastor, lives in California, is a father of 4, doing life. So Jeremy, your mission right now with Mighty Oaks. Let's just go into what is the mission of the organization. You're the CEO of the organization. So you have to have a little bit of the identity of whatever the mission is of your company.
Yeah. Well, Craig, I appreciate it. And thanks for the conversation. So Mighty Oaks Foundation, we're a nonprofit that serves veterans, service members, first responders, and spouses across the country, but really around the world. We're a non-clinical program that addresses issues like post-traumatic stress, combat trauma related to life that was taken into military or uniformed service. And really what we do is very peer-to-peer. Everyone who is a part of our program came through first as a student. So we're able to walk out the challenges of transition or the challenges of military life or life in the first responder community with folks who are struggling and hurting. That's a unique aspect of what we do. And then we've had the opportunity to work with militaries around the world to help them understand resiliency and how to communicate what it is to be resilient to the folks they're working with. We've spent time in countries around the world with chaplains and commanders who are saying a lot of things, same things that our folks are saying here in the United States. We don't know what to do. Suicides and broken homes and marriages and all those things are on the rise. We don't know how to deal with it. God has given us an open door and understanding and experience doing just that, dealing with it, addressing it, and helping folks. And so that's kind of high level, but that's what we do. We've had over 7,000 people come through one of our week-long programs. We have programs across the country. And then we've spoken to tens of thousands in resiliency conferences and other settings. So yeah, pretty high level, but that's it in a nutshell.
Sounds like it's a merger between military, faith, and just mental health.
That's exactly right. I always joke, it's not really a joke, I guess, but say that there was a time I was in the military and I left the military, struggled a lot. And so I put that behind me. And then I went into ministry, had some struggles in ministry, but eventually worked those out. And at a point, those two things came together, my ministry life or faith life and what I did in the military. And a lot of that is addressing mental health and struggles that people are having mentally, emotionally, otherwise, relationally, in the other areas because of some of the things that they've been through. So it really is the convergence of all of those things.
What was the biggest issue you had to overcome and deal with when you got out of the Marines that you have kind of the antidote for people that might be experiencing the same thing?
So when I left the Marine Corps, if you go all the way back before I was in the Marine Corps, it's the only thing I had ever wanted to do. I told my parents when I was a teenager, that's what I wanted to do. I went to college, went through a commissioning program. I was commissioned as a Marine officer and then eventually became an infantry officer. Again, that's the only thing I had ever wanted to do. And it was a dream come true. Did a number of things in the Marine Corps. I was only in the Marine Corps for a relatively short time, 8 years. But during that time, had some great deployments, had a lot of fun. And then my last deployment, I was already had put in my paperwork to get out. I was transitioning out, if you will, had about 6 months left. We deployed to Kuwait in January of 2003, was a part of the initial invasion into Iraq. In fact, our battalion, 1-5, 1st Battalion, 5th Marines, was the Marine Infantry Battalion that breached the berm, went into the southern part of the country, and then made our way to Baghdad. The Battle of Baghdad was also our battalion. And so I say all of that to say, for me, all of this was a dream come true. It's what I had pointed my entire life to. It's what we had trained and prepared for. It was extremely historic in the sense of what we were doing as a unit. And then as the Marine, 1st Marine Division, we were on the world stage. I mean, it was everything I would have asked for when I was, 12, 13 years old, telling my parents that's what I wanted to do. Came home from that, and literally 30 days later, I was out of the Marine Corps, working on a church staff. I was hired to provide leadership to the staff in some other areas. I don't have a ministry background. I didn't go to Bible college or anything like that. But the pastor said, hey, you're a leader and you need to come here. And what I found was that I was completely lost when I stepped into that environment. I'm transitioning out of the Marine Corps, the thing I had always wanted to do, leading Marines in combat, wearing the uniform, carrying the rank. All of that made sense to me. It's what I wanted to do. And within 30 days, I was now in this environment with volunteers, with people that had no context for my life and what I had been through, coming out of a war that no one understood and didn't know how to deal with me coming out of that environment. So, among other things, that transition and loss of identity created a lot of frustration, that led to a lot of anger. I took it out on the people I worked with. I almost got fired from that first ministry job at the church, which is crazy, right? But I almost got fired there. My wife probably should have left me. I was just completely out of control at home. And thankfully had the right people step into my life and help me get back on track. And it took me a while to get back on track, or to get on track, I guess. But because I had the right community around me and the right people around me, I was able to do that. But, if there was one issue, and there's a lot probably in that, there's probably some post-combat trauma there. That's something we weren't talking about in 2003. There are just regular transition issues that people have, trying to figure out new cultural environments. There's being pulled away from the brotherhood that I had in the Marine Corps. So there are a lot of issues, I think, that contributed to that. But the issue, if I had to boil it down to one thing, was just identity. It was a complete loss of identity. I identified myself as a Marine officer, as an infantry Marine. That's who I was. And then I found myself in a place where nobody cared. And so I was just lost. I didn't know who I was. And when we talk to other veterans and we talk to people who are currently serving, people who are in various leadership roles, identity is a cornerstone topic that we have to address. Because when we look at so many of the issues that our veterans and service members and first responders are dealing with, often we'll kind of look at that in terms of broken homes, suicide rates, and all of those things are out of control. If you're familiar with the suicide rates in the military community, the first responder community, out of control. And so we talk about intervention. How do we stop that? Well, really, the way I've come to understand it is that happens. Those decisions are made often because of a lack of hope. And people are hopeless when they don't know what they're doing. They don't have purpose. And you can't have purpose until you first know who you are. And so all of these issues that we address and that we talk about and that we try to help other people work through really come back in some way to an understanding of identity. Who am I? Because if you can define who you are, not what you do, not where you came from, who you are. If you can understand who you are, then you know what you need to do. And if you have a purpose, then you have hope. And then some of these downstream decisions aren't made. For me, major issue, identity, and really connecting that to, for me as a Christian, as a person of faith, to God who's outside of space and time, who doesn't move, who doesn't change. And regardless of what's going on in my life, He created me, He gave me a purpose, and I can live to fulfill that.
Very, very well said. Very well said. The interconnection and the interdependence of purpose and identity and having hope and being connected to a dream. Very important. Very important for everybody. In the sports world, what I find is that at 7, 8, 9, 10 years old, little boys have dreams. They want to play in the NBA. They want to play in Major League Baseball, whatever it may be. And they pour their heart and soul into their sport.
Right.
And then there's no separation between who they are and what they do. And even girls and teammates and friends and classmates and coaches and family members go, "Oh my God, you're a football player.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're a baseball player." That's what so then there's no identity outside of what you do.
Yeah.
And then inevitably injuries, disappointments, lack of talent, lack of opportunity, you pick the category, it comes to an end. And only 1% of 1% make it to the league in most of these leagues. And then they go through a transition where they go through an identity crisis and they don't know what they're doing. So what I talk about, so I'm curious about what you guys do. I talk about really tapping into who you are, irrespective of what you do.
That's right.
While you do it, don't wait till you're done. So like if you're in the military guys have the same issue. It's like, it's all encompassing. So when you're in the military, you tell me, what hour of the day are you not a Marine?
Yeah. Yeah.
You're a Marine 24/7.
That's right.
In the NFL, if you're an NFL guy, there's no off days. Even in the off season, you're an NFL guy.
Right.
So there's never a separation between what you do and who you are. And people forget that we're human beings, not human doers, but people refer to us, relate to us, and communicate with us more about what we do than who we are.
Yeah, that's good.
Your thoughts on that, and more importantly, how do you help people in the moment? Like you mentioned, you have a son who's an avid sports nut, loves to play sports, football, baseball, or whatever. We don't want to discourage those guys from doing that because there's a lot worse things they could be doing.
Yeah, right.
Okay. They could join a gang. Okay, let's not do that. So how do you help him? Because if you can't do it at home, you can't do it at work.
Right, right.
How do you help your son realize he's important, he's valuable, he's loved, he's he's got skills and talents. He just so happens to be doing one of them right now, which is athletics.
Yeah, great question. Very timely. It's funny. You mentioned my son. He plays high school football. He also plays baseball. Baseball is he just enjoys doing it. He doesn't take it even too seriously. He takes football very seriously. And he's in the weight room at 5:30 in the morning. He is going to the practices. The school that he attends, a great school. It's a smaller school, but they have an actual athletics program. So if you play for one of their major sports in the last couple of periods of your day, you spend time with coaches and other people who work with you. They'll help you with your academics if you need to, but they will help you hone your craft as an athlete. And it's funny, he's doing that. He's very good. Between you and me and anyone else listening, he's not going to play football in Division I school. Maybe there's a place for him somewhere, but he's good, but he's probably not that good. But I love him, and he puts so much time into it. And it's crazy. I've never thought about it until this last NFL draft. And I'm watching the draft, and he loves the Eagles, so we love the Eagles, right? And we watch it together and we talk about it. And I was watching these kids coming out of college, hoping against hope they get picked. Many of them, undrafted, and so now they need to figure out the path. And it's crazy. I've never had it hit me this way. I became kind of emotional watching these kids because I felt so bad for them. And it's crazy because they're getting called up to the biggest show, right? And they're going to make a lot of money and they're going to have the fame and the thing. I felt so bad for them because they're going to age out at 26, 27. If they're in the right position, maybe a little bit longer than that. Quarterback can go longer. Most of them won't. And that's it. And it made me really sad. It made me sad for my son. Now, my son, we've had the opportunity. He I think could take or leave playing after high school. He loves it, but he has other things that he wants to do. And this is a conversation we've had around our kitchen table since they were very little. We're not going to make sports our identity. We're not going to make something else our identity. We're very involved in other things. Our family is more important. Our community is more important. Faith is more important. And these other things can be a part of that. And we want to enjoy these other things, but that's not who you are. And I think as a parent, the way that you communicate that is by not prioritizing the other things over those identity things. A lot of parents do this, and we're kind of living in this world as parents where every single weekend you're at a tournament somewhere with your kids playing a sport. Every single weekend or throughout the year, it's all about the thing that they do. How could they not take that on as their identity? Because that's all that they're involved in. It's everything. And it's everything to the parents, and it becomes everything to the kids, and it's everything to the coaches. And so you have to be very careful to continue to have the conversation. This is wonderful that you get to do this. You're in a great place to do this, but you're also going to do these other things. And so that's a big part of it. I have 4 kids. My other son, I have 2 boys and 2 girls. My other son is a police officer. That's a place where you can also adopt an identity that is very much connected to your work. A lot of the young guys that he works with, that's exactly what they've done. And we've continued to have that conversation, even as he's doing this work now as a young man. Invest in your kids, invest in your family, invest in what you're doing. Don't allow that to become your identity. But it's very subtle. It's subtle because we love doing those things. And particularly when we're younger, we're good at those things. We find a lot of fulfillment and a lot of joy in those things. But we have to understand that all of it will change. All of it will change for better or worse. It's not always bad, but for better or worse, it will always change. Jobs change, relationships change, positions change, your notoriety changes. The former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, he had been the commandant, became the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. I knew him years and years ago. He was senior to me, of course, but knew him. I was in the same regiment as him, General Joe Dunford. And I've heard him talk about how one day you're the most important man in the military, and then you retire, and the next day your phone doesn't even ring. It happens at every level. And if you are not clear on who you are outside of whatever it is you do, then when that happens, the bottom's going to fall out. And so it becomes very important. So again, looping that back, as a Christian, I would say you need to tie your identity to something that doesn't change. That's why faith is so central to what we do and what we talk about, because who I was created to be, the unique talents and gifts and opportunities that I have, those are unique to me and they don't change. So you start asking yourself questions like, all right, what do I enjoy doing that I would do even if I didn't get paid for it? What do I have a natural gift or talent for that maybe isn't developed, but I wouldn't mind developing? and you start to go through a process of understanding who you are. You get other people involved, people, coaches, maybe teachers, other people who can see you from the outside that can speak that truth into your life. You're great at this. You're different in this area, different than everyone else. Maybe you need to invest in that. Figure out who you are so that when what you do goes away, you're able to continue moving forward.
That's awesome. I think the identity game is one of the most it's a lifelong challenge for everybody.
Yes.
Because you do. I mean, the NFL, the day after you get cut, nobody calls.
Right.
Nobody gives you free meals at restaurants anymore.
Right.
Nobody's like treating you special anymore. And you got to pay your taxes and everything else just like everybody else.
Yeah.
Okay. But the process of figuring out who you are is very important because let's say, for example, you're a young person and you get dumped by your partner.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And you don't know where it came from. You didn't see it coming. That's an identity killer for a lot of people, especially middle school, high school age, even college. Let's say somebody cheats on somebody. That's the great way to basically say, I don't want to be with you anymore. And so getting back to the process of identity, how do you balance that with, you have a son that's 15 or so that is learning the merit and the value of hard work, commitment, dedication, putting team before self, all these things that he's learning in football. So if you're the pops that says, hey, we don't want to be too involved. We don't want to, hitch ourselves to that wagon because you may not have the size or the speed or whatever it may be to play in the NFL. How do you balance that? Because, you want to, like for my kids, I want them to go all out in whatever they're doing.
Agreed.
All out, no breaks, not 99%. I want them to do 100%, but not be married to the outcome, not be attached to the outcome.
Yes.
Thoughts?
Yeah. If we're talking about a young person and you're a parent, I think there are different stages of this. If I'm in my 20s, it's different. If I'm in my middle-aged years, it's different when I start talking about identity and getting there and becoming clear on it. But I think as a parent working with a young person, I'm with you. And I've told my son this, if you decide to play, I'm not making you play. I'm not pushing you into it. I want you to be exactly who you were created to be. I want you to accomplish whatever God set in front of you. But whatever you set your hand to, you're going to be the best that you can be. Maybe not the best in your environment or the best in the world, but the best that you can be, which means showing up early. We're not going to get there late, doing the work, doing more work. I talked to him about leadership and what it looks like to be a leader in the weight room and what it looks like to be a leader on the field and what it looks like to be a leader in the classroom. And so trying to teach, that from kind of a holistic, you are a human being, as you mentioned, and I want this to make you better in all of these areas. So part of it is just having those conversations very intentionally with your kids, not making winning and losing the standard. You can't control that. But what I can control is how hard my kids work, or at least the fact that they're going to show up and be there and stay and whatever. I can control, and they can control being a leader. They can control being a mentor to the younger athletes. They can control working hard and getting good grades. And so it's really communicating that to the young athlete, I think, that you can't control winning and losing. You need to be competitive because we're here to win. We're not here to lose. This is not a participation trophy game. We're here to win. But what you can control and contribute to that victory, that win, is giving it 110 every time you have the opportunity to do that. And so that's a big part of it, I think, because that's what will then translate into the rest of the world. Kids that come up in, kind of on a soapbox, I guess, but kids that come up environments where they're the star athlete on every team that they're a part of, and they've been taught that winning is the most important thing, they find themselves in other environments as adults and they can't function because people don't care and they don't always win. But if you've taught those young people you work hard every time you're lifting weights, running, whatever you're doing, whatever the practice is, you're there early, you stay late, you're setting the example, you're not falling behind. That translates into every area of life. And so the identity is less about winning and losing than it is working hard and performing. And I think that's important. But again, I think it's also important, and no criticism to parents that see something in their kids and want to invest in them. I'm for it. Go to the tournaments, do the things, but don't make that the entire identity of your family or that athlete. Get them involved in community activities. Get them involved in church groups, get them involved in volunteering in other places, take them on vacations that don't have anything to do with the sport that they're involved in, show them other places, sit down and ask them what they care about, ask them what they are interested in, figure that out. Don't impose as a parent your maybe regrets from your own past and what you believe should have been your identity or what you could have accomplished. Don't impose that on your kids. Encourage them, motivate them, push them, make sure they do the very best they can do, but then also very intentionally help them explore the rest of the world and figure out what else is out there. And then I think as a parent, this is the last thing I'll say on that. As a parent, you have to communicate with words and actions. I love you more than I love this thing that you're doing. I care about you, whether it goes really well or not so well. And I hope that you'll go on and do something with this. I've had this conversation with my son. I hope that you get a scholarship somewhere and that pays for college because you played football. But look, if you don't, that's fine. It's going to be okay. We'll figure it out. That's not who you are. I get it. We'll have those conversations. Don't just assume that your kids understand that. They don't understand it. And then, you know this world better than I do, but right now with NIL money and all the other fame and fortune that comes along with being a student athlete, the pressure on these kids is so intense. If you don't intentionally guide them, help them to understand that life is bigger than a game, man, they're going to struggle later on, and you may not be there to help them work through that.
Absolutely true. A couple thoughts. One about winning and losing versus giving it your best.
Yes.
I was guilty of winning and losing. That's how I was wired. That's how I was programmed. And it's a horrible place to be.
Yes.
Because you're not going to win all the time.
Right.
But you can. So, here's the question you need to ask your son sometime. Would you rather win and not play your best? Or would you rather play your best and not win? And that's a conundrum for competitors because they want both. They want to win and play their best.
Yeah.
But you can only pick one.
Yeah.
Well, the one you can control is which one?
That's right. Yep.
Play your best.
That's right.
You can't control the winning. Ball can bounce the wrong way. Your teammate can drop the ball. Lots of different things can happen. The weather can get involved, whatever the case may be. So I think the idea of winning should be replaced with let's go out and do your best. You've been training for this. You've been doing, your life has been centered around this. You don't drink, you don't smoke, you don't drink sodas, things like that to help you perform at a higher level. So let's go do that.
Correct.
And let's let and I always struggled when I was in high school because we'd pray before I went to a parochial school. We'd pray before games. And I was always wondering when we played another school that was a Christian school, whose team's God?
Yeah, right. Which team is God pulling for?
Yeah, because both of them are praying, right?
Yeah.
And so what I think God wants us to do to honor and glorify him is just give it everything you got and don't blow a gasket if you don't win.
Right. Yeah, it's good. That's good.
And then the second thing is most coaches are about systems. Even the military is about systems.
Yes.
Organizations of corporate America is about systems.
Yes.
It really needs to be about standards. And the really high productive organizations are about standards. And it's more important about how you do what you do, meaning your standard about your system,
right,
than it is your system.
Right.
Because if you and I are salespeople and we're in the same company and we both work the same system, I guarantee you one of us is going to be better than the other.
Yeah.
We're not going to perform the same. And so I think for young men, especially for all people, but especially for boys that are into sports, teaching them the standard. What is your standard? And, I teach my guys that are at high levels, your standard needs to be higher than the guy above you. So your coach, if this is his standard, your standard needs to be here. Because if you fall short, there's a good chance you're still going to meet his standard. Or what most people do is the leader says, here, this is what we're doing. This is our standard. And everybody's like resisting.
Yeah.
And then they're like, well, in their minds are going, do you think he'll notice I didn't do all the reps? I didn't finish it or whatever it is. It's like, no, it becomes almost like anti-gravity where you don't want to get there, but you want to get credit for it. Or when you have a higher standard, you don't worry about the coach's standard.
That's
you don't worry about the teacher's standard. You don't care about your parents' standard. So if you have a curfew for your kid should be 10 minutes before you. You don't have to worry about yours, even if he's 5 minutes late. Last one.
Yeah, that's good.
I think there's this concept that Jesus talks about in the Bible many, many times. It's called love. And we as dads need to make sure that our kids know we love them despite the results, despite the failures, despite the disappointments. And it's so, to me, parents have the biggest influence on identity than any.
100%. 100%.
And it's when you come through with love, you show your kids that it doesn't really matter what they do. So you don't have to tell them, hey, don't put too much into blank. No, they know that because you love them regardless.
Yeah. And so that's a great point. I've talked about this again in terms of parenting, that so often what parents want from their kids is for their kids to reflect well on them as the parent. I want them to behave well in public because I don't want to be embarrassed by their bad behavior. I want them to perform well at school or in their sports world or whatever, because that reflects well on me. And so we end up parenting from a place of either embarrassment or fear of what may happen, or our own insecurities and brokenness and the people that didn't pour into us when we were younger, instead of from a place of love. And the way I kind of define love, whether it's in a marriage relationship or with kids or anywhere else, love is a lot different than like. Love is making a decision to do what's best for the object of your love. It's making a decision to do what's best for the object of your love. And so it's completely sacrificial. It has nothing to do with me. And I will do what's best, even if it's hardest, for the one that I say I love. And so in the context of this conversation, I think that's being intentional about helping them with identity. And that is communicating to them, look, I'm for you no matter what happens. And your child knows if you love them unconditionally or if there's some condition attached to it. Dad likes me a lot more when I win than when I lose. Dad likes me a lot more when I get to get on this team than when I don't. And, you can run that all the way through the gambit, but your kids internalize that then, and it's not love that you're leading with. It's some kind of self-fulfillment. So yeah, great point. You lead with love as a parent, and so much of the anxiety and so much of the pressure and so much of the misplaced identity will take care of itself, because your kids know they've got someone rooting for them, whether they go to the NFL or become a garbage man. Nothing wrong with becoming a garbage man, but dad doesn't care. I can wear any uniform, and dad's going to love me regardless. And that's huge, huge.
Well, I think that a lot of things that we as parents mess up on is not intentional.
Of course. Yeah, of course.
Yeah, no parent wakes up and goes, hey, I'm gonna beat up my kid today.
Right.
Emotionally abuse him. No, nobody does that. But here's what happens. When you've got control of the environment, you've got a newborn that's at home, you got 100% control. Then at some point, you got to take them outside. You take them to Target, you take them to the grocery store, take them to church, you take them to places. And all of a sudden, now you start feeling like eyeballs are on you because your kid's being a brat.
Yeah.
Or misbehaving or being loud or whatever the case may be. So then, my daughter's getting her master's in psychology right now. And she said that 70% of programming from parents at the toddler age is negative and no, because we constantly are putting these boundaries on our kids. Don't talk, don't reach, don't touch, don't everything. Right.
Yeah.
And so what ends up happening is, I think it backfires on us as parents, and as these people grow up, like trying to figure out who they are when we just tell them they can't and they shouldn't and all that stuff.
Yep.
And so I call it in performance world and identity world. It's when you're playing an outside game. You're a people pleaser and you care what other people think. Like if you and I cared about what we look like or what what people are thinking, we wouldn't be able to speak because we would be hyper-analyzing everything we're saying.
Yeah.
And we'd try it on 6 shirts trying to find the right one that look good, right? You got to play an inside game.
That's good. Yeah.
And when you play an inside game, other people like you because you like yourself. So one of the things that I've discovered over 35 years of representing professional athletes is that everybody's got a story. What is your story?
Man, a lot of different directions. I guess we could go there, but I shared some of it there a minute ago. I was raised in a great home, wonderful parents, and I'm very, very thankful for them. My dad, just a very strong man, but very clear on his convictions and what he believed. And, I always tell people that the only skill I really have, and I don't have many, I have basically one. The only skill I have is that I just won't quit. and I got that from my dad. I watched my dad in so many different settings and environments, and if he said he was going to do it, he did it. And whatever that meant, he did it. And so raised in a great environment, went to a good college. I married young. My wife and I were married in college, and I had everything that I had ever wanted, and then came back from Iraq and basically tried to burn it all to the ground. I mean, I didn't mean to, but I was so confused and so lost and just whatever that I almost lost my reputation. I almost lost my relationships with my family, with my wife. I had 2 little kids at the time. They didn't want to be anywhere near me when I came home because I was just so angry and often out of control. And then I had good people, men, strong men, step into my life, and strong men like guys from the church who had normal jobs. They weren't military guys, but they cared enough about me to confront me and say, hey, this is not who you are. This is not who I've observed you to be in the past. And other people, my dad being one of them, my wife, consistently being one of those people to say, you're better than this. We believe in you. We know there's more there. Let us help you get there. And so, came out of a great environment. It took me a while to break.
Jeremy, I'm going to interject something here. I'm going to go back to when you were a kid.
Yeah.
You had this dream of being in the military, serving our country, maybe developing leadership, getting to explore the world on Uncle Sam's tab and kind of seeing what's out there. But my guess is you didn't have a dream for after that.
No.
So most professional athletes have a dream of making it to the bigs, but they don't have a dream for after that. And so that's why you struggled, because you didn't have any foundation. You didn't have any safe harbors. You just didn't have anything to attach to because you hadn't thought that far ahead.
No, that's 100% right. And, I teach on resiliency. And one of the points that I'll make when teaching on resiliency is to be resilient, you have to pre-decide. You have to make a decision now before the bottom falls out, what you're going to do when it does. And we talk about training and we talk about preparation and all the things that are involved in that and kind of wargaming that so you know what to do to get back up and keep moving forward, because a lot of people fall down. I say it this way in one of the talks that I give. Some people are so overwhelmed by the unexpected that they become lifelong victims of a one-time event. Something happens they didn't see coming, and now for the rest of their lives, they're the victim of that event. So yeah, exactly to your point is if you have a big dream and it's hard to achieve or attain, and you do it, you haven't thought beyond that. I haven't thought beyond that. And yeah, when I was confronted with who am I if I'm not that, no idea. And my marriage was great when I was doing the thing that I had always wanted to do. My relationships were great when I was doing the thing that I always wanted to do. My life was, it was exactly what I wanted. It was amazing. And then overnight it wasn't. And yeah, it took just some good people to step in and say, hey bro, this is not okay. And there may be a reason, but there's not an excuse for how you're behaving. And we can help you get back on track, but you have to decide that you want to get back on track and go through that process of saying, who am I? What am I really tied to? To your point. And it took a long time to get there. But one of my challenges, I think, during that time, it was 2003, again, no one's talking about this, was I felt like I was broken somehow, that I was the only one who had ever been through this or was struggling this way. I'd have thoughts of the world being a better place without me, my family being a better place without me. Financially, my wife would be better if I was gone, all of those things. And I thought I was the only one. And it took me about 10 years to realize that I was definitely not the only one. But I had a community and people in my life who helped me get back on track. And I needed to then leverage that to help other people I knew who were also struggling. And that's been the fight since 2012 was when we started doing this work with veterans and service members.
Okay, you said a couple of things there I want to go back and highlight. One is the concept of everyone is a victim of a one-time event.
It can be, yes.
I think everyone is, because our brain and our mind likes that. So if someone helps you reframe that event, so it was actually for you, and you learn these life lessons from it, and it made you stronger, it made you more resilient, it made you whatever it made you, you replace it with something else. And so we have to constantly rewrite our story and reframe our past, because we have always, like if you go to counseling, let's say we're co-counselors and we're interviewing somebody, they got their one thing. They got cheated on, they got divorced, they went bankrupt, they got fired when they didn't deserve to. They weren't seen and heard like they expected to on the football team, and they didn't get the scholarship because they didn't play as much as they expected to play their senior year in high school. And they will harbor that for the rest of their life.
Yes, right.
And it will impact all touch points, relationships, body image, finances, their health, their faith. Pick a major rock. It touches all of them.
Yep.
So one of the things that I do when I help people is I help them rewrite their story and reframe their past. But one thing I didn't learn until right now was we got to do it every time a new thing steps in.
Yeah. Yeah.
Be the thing that's going to hold you back.
Yeah. And if I can just interject, I guess, or provide some color to victimhood, I do think there is a real difference to having been victimized and becoming a victim. We all have things in our lives that we could allow to shade the rest of our lives. The question we have to continue to answer, and this is the reframing process, is, am I going to remain chained to that event, or am I going to reframe it in a way, understand it in a way, get help to deal with this so that it doesn't have a hold on me anymore? And this is what a lot of people do with those events is, and you know them because every time you talk to them, it comes back to this somehow, right? Like, well, this thing happened. And some of the stuff that happens is horrible, but there's a difference between something happening and me hanging on to the chain of that thing for the rest of my life. And I can kind of function, within the length of that chain, but I'll never fully be what I'm created to be. I'll never fully go the distance I should be able to go because I'm hanging on to that chain. I can only go so far. And I think that reframing process allows you to let go of the chain so you can continue to move forward. And then you're right, something else will happen, but this becomes muscle memory after a while where you go, I've already decided there's not a thing in my life that will ever happen that is going to be the defining moment of my life in a bad way. I can grow from it. I can learn from it. Certainly things will hurt and it will be a process, but I'm not going to remain under the control of that event. And I think that's when we become victims, is when we allow ourselves to remain under the control of, whatever the event is.
Amen. Amen. I'm thinking lots of different things, and all I can say is amen. I think that some people are real victims.
Unbelievably. Yes. Yes.
They need to get help because they have been abused or whatever.
And man, I would never want this conversation to sound like it's a diminishing of what people have gone through. It's unbelievable the pain that humans inflict on other humans. It's unbelievable what some people have been through. I would just say that you have the opportunity to do something with that, whatever it is. And maybe the something you do is help other people who've been through something similar. To me, that's letting go of the chain. That's saying I'm not a victim to that anymore. And I'm going to help other people get out of the pit too. And there's so much that can be done there. But yeah, you're exactly right. There's a lot of pain and people deal with some very difficult things.
Well, one of the things that I do with my story, which is synonymous with your identity, is I kind of break it up into three parts. We have the story of our purpose with our Creator. And that's really tapping into what's the word tell us? What is God telling you? What have your parents told you?
Yeah.
What is your wife telling you? Your husband telling you? That this is your purpose. Okay. The second one is your billboard story, which is what we all know, and our elevator speech, where we just kind of tell people, if we really want to share and have a convo, we'll make it interesting. If we don't, we're on an airplane ride and we really don't want to talk to the person next to us, and they say, where are you going? You just make it boring. But that's something that is dynamic and it kind of changes and it's somewhat superficial. And then the third one is invisible. And that is our pocket voice that shows up negative probably 90% of the time in the biggest moments. When it's not a big moment, it's positive or it's silent. But when you want it the most, so let's just take sports. It's not in the preseason.
Yeah.
It's in the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
It's third and got to get it to go advance in the playoffs. That's when that negative voice comes out. And guess who that negative voice is? It's self. So, I've heard people talk about putting duct tape on that voice so you can't hear it. And I have been studying how do you train it so that it's for you, not against you in those big moments. And I'm still on a journey of figuring it out. But I think the best thing I've learned is that you got to train your voice when you're not in a pressure moment, so that you can remind yourself of who you are in a big moment.
That's good.
Because, think about how many dudes have got down on their knee to ask a girl to, be their bride, and their little pocket voice is going, I don't know if she's going to say yes.
Yeah.
I don't know if you got a nice enough car, whatever the superficial thought is. And it's like, it destroys the joy of the moment.
Yeah. 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 There's a saying, and I think this is right. You never rise to the level of your motivation. You fall to the level of your training. And I think that's right. This is something that the military does really well. Police officers, firefighters do really well, is you train thousands of times these actions so that when there's an actual enemy or an actual issue or situation you have to deal with, it's a response that is trained, that is subconscious, if you will. It's a response. It's not a process that you have to go through to decide, what am I going to do now? And then that's true in every area of life. That goes back to resiliency is pre-deciding. It's deciding ahead of time what I'm going to do when I fall, and then putting the right pieces in place. I talk about leadership sometimes. And when I do, I try to make the point that we should spend more time becoming the right kind of leader than learning how to do leadership. We can learn how to do leadership in a lot of different environments, but what we need to do is build the character of a leader and have the characteristics of a person who leads, so that when we're faced with that unexpected situation, man, we're ready. We're ready. And that's exactly right. You talk about a mindset. That's a mindset that I'm going to train. I'm going to do this 1,000 times. 1,000 times. I've thought through this scenario. I've made these decisions. And so when I'm faced with it in a big game, it's no different than any other game because I've already done this. We're just going through the motions of doing it again.
Okay, so I love that, and I agree with that, and I need to do more of that. I need to coach people to do that. But here's what popped in my mind. You could train 10,000 reps for all these situations. And later today, you're a first responder and you face a situation that you didn't train for. It's something different. It's not something anybody ever anticipated. And that's when your true identity shows up. That's when your pocket voice tells you who you really think you are. So if you don't know who you are and you don't love yourself and you don't understand that God loves you and he created you the way he created you for a reason, it's going to show up right there.
Yeah. Yeah.
So simultaneous to doing all those reps is almost like making sure you're connected to the word so you know who you are regardless.
1,000%. And so that goes back to identity, right? I know who I am. I know who I was created to be. It goes back to the earlier conversation of I can't control wins and losses, but I can control working hard all the time. And, I do a lot of public speaking and so often I find myself in these environments where I'm like, holy cow, why would these guys show up to hear from me? Why would this group want to come and listen to me? Or you're in an environment where there are a lot of other great speakers that you look up to and you're like, why am I on the stage with these guys? I have gone through this mental exercise hundreds of times before I walk up on a platform or on a stage. And it's this: get up there, start talking. Your training, your experience, your reps, if you will take over. But you have to believe that you're in the right place, doing the right thing for you, that it's not about winning or losing. I've put in the work and I've done the reps. And so even if this is a new environment for me, a new situation, a new circumstance, I've never seen it exactly like this before, it's going to be okay because I'm ready. And then you get in and do the work. And there's something to just saying, I'm going to take the next step. I'm going to do the next thing. I'm not going to get so wrapped around the axle about yes, or you wouldn't be here. You wouldn't be in the Super Bowl if you didn't already have the preparation behind you to do the thing. You wouldn't be called out on this call as a paramedic or a firefighter if you weren't prepared to do the thing. You wouldn't be, put your context around it. You wouldn't be here if you weren't ready. And this is why giving 110 all the time, knowing who you are, why those things are important, because the only voice that can really sideline you if you have that confidence is the one that says, you haven't been doing all the reps. You haven't read all the stuff. You've been cheating. And so if that's in the back of your mind, then you are going to fail and you probably should. But if you've been doing the things, then when you find yourself in that unusual situation, jump in with both feet, you're ready to go and let your training take over.
A couple thoughts on that, Jeremy. One is that the message that you have that the audience needs to hear is diluted by you.
Right.
If you don't think you're worthy of giving it.
100%. That's exactly right.
And so what happens is everybody is tested a couple different times when they go speak. One is, 5 minutes before. The second one is once you're in your speech and you start wondering, how's it landing?
Right.
Okay.
Oh, yes.
They didn't laugh at my joke.
Yeah.
Everybody's looking at their phone. For whatever reason, now there's this murmur out there because people are talking. Or everybody's going to the bathroom at the same time. And it's like, that's that inside focus again.
Yeah.
You can't pay attention because you know what? God may have you there for one person. There might be, 10,000 people there. God's got you there for one person.
Right.
And your ego's like, no, I got to be important and I got to make sure that everybody loves me. And everybody thinks I'm funny and entertaining and whatever else. So it's like that whole business and the whole mindset of audience of one.
Yes. Yeah. And that applies to every situation. And, we talk a little bit about football in the football context. It's the next play. Stop worrying about the rest of it. Get the next one, right? Like advance the ball. In your marriage relationship, it's doing the next right thing. It's having the next right conversation. It's controlling yourself so you don't do the next wrong thing. It's always that. It's always that. And our ego does take over. You say, well, the end is it's just not going to work out. Or if we don't do the next 47 things, you're exactly right. I need to do the next right thing. Maybe it's for one person. Maybe it's for one play. Maybe it's for one moment. But that's all that really matters. And that's what all the training and the preparation and the thought ahead of time and the pre-decision, that's what all that leads up to. And it's gotten me ready for this moment. And here we are. So I'm going to worry about this moment. I was talking to my wife about some things last night, and there's a lot of things going on. And she said this to me, exactly this. You need to just worry about the next thing. Why don't you just focus on the next thing? And if you do that, it clears the clutter. It gives you a lot of focus. It calms you because I know how to do the next thing or I wouldn't be standing here. And then you're able to move beyond that. But yeah, that's right.
So think about being an NFL player and you're focused on working out today, and it's in the off season right now. And you get on social media and you find out your team just, is signing a guy in free agency or drafting a guy at your position, in a high round. Your head starts spinning. And then some prognosticator, some media type guy is saying, oh, they might be letting you go.
Yeah.
And then I need you anymore.
Man.
And then, they bring you in to OTAs here in a month or so. And it's like, where's your head? Where's your headspace? Is it like waiting for the axe to drop? I mean, right? So I think the thing that the evil one does is creates chaos.
That's true. That's right.
In our lives.
Yeah.
So we don't keep the main thing. We don't focus on the next thing. We think about all the things that we can't control anyway. We care about what people think that really we shouldn't care about.
Right.
And, I remember back in high school, I cared about all the wrong things, wanting to be liked and didn't want to hurt anybody's feelings and wanted to be liked by the teachers and the coaches and all these things. Today, I got my creator, I got my wife, I got myself, and my kids got to live with me.
Right.
I am who I am.
Right. Right.
I got good intentions 99.9% of the time. And it's a lot easier and it's a lot lighter than what most guys are doing, because I've done it too. You're worried about all that stuff that just doesn't matter.
Yeah. Yeah. And whether you're a parent, you're working a corporate job somewhere, you're in professional sports, whatever, you have to be, and particularly now, very intentional about keeping the right voices in and the wrong voices out. The whole world wants to tear down someone who's doing something important, doing something more than them. Social media makes it easy to hear those voices, which, is kind of a modern problem. But I'm sure at some point in the past, it was picking up the newspaper, going to the local bar and hearing guys talk or whatever it was. If you want to stay focused on what you've been called and created and how you identify, you have to keep those wrong voices out. The Bible talks about this in Philippians chapter 4, verse 8. It says, whatsoever things are good and lovely and of good report and just think on these things, right? There's a list there. Think on these things. Think on these good things. The verses right before that, for our Bible scholars, talk about peace. Do you want to have peace in your life? So the first couple of verses talk about that. The very next one says, here are the things you need to think about. And we get so caught up in thinking about all the externals and all the other things and what I don't know and what could happen and what that guy over there is saying. It takes us completely off of what we've been called to do and created to do and what we've been gifted to do and what we can do. And it's fascinating to see people who are the best in the world at what they do have those moments, whether it's, at the plate or on the field or whatever. And you're like, what? I know 12-year-olds who would have handled that better. Well, what happens? Exactly what happens to the rest of us. And they have a moment where they lapse. And then you see folks who, particularly in sports, where they do pretty well. Then they get traded to another team and they have these breakout seasons and it's unbelievable. It's because they figured out how to be the same person wherever they were. The scheme may be different, so now they fit better, but they don't listen to the voices. They just keep doing what they do. And for the rest of us, man, that's the goal. Keep the other voices out, stay focused on what I know I'm here to do, and do that.
Jeremy, this has absolutely flown. We're almost at an hour.
Wow.
Bro, you got life. I got life. Hey, somebody wants to hire you as a speaker. They want to find you. They've got a relative that they'd like to get in your program that's dealing with some PTSD. It's going to be in the show notes, but why don't you share where people can find you?
Yeah, I appreciate it. For me personally, look up my name, Jeremy Stalnecker, on the socials. You can find me. There aren't too many Jeremy Stalneckers out there, probably none other than me. So you'll find me. But for our organization, that's the best place you could go. MightyOaksPrograms.org. MightyOaksPrograms.org is our website. We don't charge anything for our program. We don't charge anything even for travel to get to our program. We just want to help. So check us out, and love to communicate with you there.
Thank you very much for being on today. Enjoyed the convo. I want to thank everybody for listening. Hope you learned something about your identity, your purpose, and maybe got a little bit more hope today. If you're in one of those places in your life right now where you're like, man, how am I going to do it? You're thinking about quitting. You're thinking about quitting your life, all those kind of things. I hope today you got some hope, because there is hope.
It's good. Thank you, Craig.
You're welcome. Hey, it's Craig Domann, the host of Pro Mindset Podcast. I want to thank you for listening or watching today's show. And you can catch us every week on the normal social media platforms like YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and all the listening podcast platforms. I hope you enjoyed today's show. And more importantly, I hope you gained a pro mindset insight. Please be sure to rate and review Pro Mindset Podcast. And I look forward to catching up with you on our next show.